For a few years now, I have had a lot of success growing the West Indian cucumber. And this type of cucumber is actually not a true cucumber, it's actually a different species. The taste is very similar and it performs pretty well. So far I've been impressed with it and I look forward to growing it each year. The West Indian cucumber, also known as the maroon cucumber, and the Latin name is Cucumis anguria. So this plant is seen to have originally originated from Africa, and it's been grown in North America now as well. And this plant is very similar to the common garden cucumber, right? However, this is a different species. Anguria is the species, whereas the species name of the garden cucumber is sativus, right? So those are two different species, but they're both in the same Cucumis genus. So this particular plant is really cool. I like to use it as a sprawling ground cover, right? So if I'm growing peppers and maybe sorghum, I can use this plant to carpet like that bottom ground cover layer, right? And that'll help to hold a little bit more moisture or control the evaporation of water out of the soil. And it can also provide a good, nice habitat for various beneficial insects as well, and beneficial arachnids like spiders. And then it's also a way to like three-dimensionally stack harvest, right? Where you can get more yield out of a bed than just growing one crop there, right? Where you can actually begin to like harvest crops on multiple levels. You have, for example, the cucumber plant as that base ground cover layer, then you have the peppers on top, and then in the overstory type thing, you have the sorghum, right? And just as an example, so you're able to maximize productivity and be more efficient with land use management. So the cucumber fruits themselves are smaller than the typical garden cucumber, right? These are usually going to be 2 to 4 inches long, and they can be 1 to 2 inches thick, right, or wide, or in diameter. Now this can depend on what stage or age you harvest the cucumbers. The younger they are, the more tender they will be, but even when they get big, like closer to that 3 to 4 inch long range, they can still be pretty tender. You can eat them raw in like salads, or you can cook them up into soups, stews, you know, whatever the case may be. So this vining cucumber plant is, it's a lot less weight, right, than like a typical garden cucumber plant. So with certain plants, this can be a better ground cover option because it's not going to pull all those plants down, right, with it. The fruits are smaller, they have a lot less weight to them. The vines themselves are a little bit smaller, not quite as thick and broadly leaved or anything like that. So they really seem to work well as like an understory crop, and they're not going to be as likely to potentially damage the plants that are around them. So the leaves, when you look at them, they actually look a lot like watermelon leaves. You know, unlike the garden cucumber leaves that look more like a squash plant or a melon plant or something like that, right? They have more of like a maple-leaved type appearance to them, whereas the leaves of this cucumber are a lot more intensely lobed. I've also found this particular plant to be pretty resistant, or at least resilient to cucumber beetle damage, right? Doesn't seem to be as heavily affected by the bacterial wilt. In a whole patch you might get like 1 or 2 that may wilt, or this is my experience anyway, but then sometimes they can actually come back and bounce back from that, and overall they don't really seem to be that intensely affected. Now there could be some various factors at play. It could be the genetics in this different species of cucumber, it could be the certain species of cucumber beetles that I have here, it could be the higher ecological function as I continue to advance my garden, and maybe I'm having less cucumber beetle damage in terms of that. And the taste of this cucumber is really good, right? It's nice and mild. It tastes like somewhere between a cucumber and a zucchini, right? So there's a variety of uses you can use this for. I've used it in salads and soups and things of that nature, so it's really kind of versatile. And then one cool thing I did with this cucumber this year was I oversowed it in an area where I had planted some peppers and some other plants. And then what I did was, when these seedlings were really young, like when they had put out like 1 or 2 true leaves, I transplanted them to some of them to a different area of the garden, right? The plants that I was thinning out. And I kept them watered, and I mulched them with grass clipping mulch, and they actually grew really well and are producing some of these cucumbers right now, actually. And this is where some of this footage is coming from. So usually, like a lot of plants in the cucurbit family, like the squash, pumpkins, cucumbers, things like that, don't like to be transplanted, but these guys seemed pretty resilient with that, especially if you take care of them a little bit in the beginning. However, I did plant some of them by some sweet fennel, and those didn't seem to do quite as well. It could have been because of the sweet fennel, because sometimes that plant can be a little allelopathic towards other plants. But at this point, that's really just kind of anecdotal, and I'd like to kind of play with that a little bit more in the future. And of course, it's good to try to disturb the roots as least amount as possible, and then just keep them watered for the next few weeks as they acclimate to their new spot in the garden. Also, one of the last things I want to mention too is the size of the seeds of this cucumber are like really small, right? They're like a fourth or a fifth of the size of a normal cucumber seed. For those people who might not like super seedy cucumbers, this might be a good option that one can use, and even when these fruits are a little bit more mature, the seeds are still not really much of a factor when eating them. And I did get the West Indian cucumber from the Experimental Farm Network. I think they still have them in stock, but even if not, there are plenty of other places out there, especially online, that have these seeds available. So thank you so much for checking out this video on the West Indian cucumber. All right, this is a cool cucumber type plant that we can add into a garden. It doesn't require a whole lot of inputs, like in terms of fertilizers or whatever. I have found it to be more resilient to the cucumber beetles that we have around here, like the spotted cucumber beetle and the striped cucumber beetle, and it's just a really exciting and unique crop to grow. So thanks so much for checking out this video, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.